Amara Johnson stood under the neon lights of La Lumiere, an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city, where sleek cars glided past and boisterous laughter spilled out from guests entering through the glittering glass doors. She held Nia tightly, her 6-month-old daughter, who was wailing her tiny sobs, sharp enough to slice through the cold evening air. The blue dress Amara had borrowed from her sister Keisha was slightly tight at the shoulders and too long past her knees, making her feel like an actress in a film whose lines she didn't know. She glanced at her phone for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The screen was blank. No messages, no calls, no sign of the man she'd been set up to meet on this blind date. 20 minutes late, and each passing second made Amara feel like the biggest fool in the world. She stepped back, trying to avoid the curious gaze of a middle-aged couple walking by. The woman with a designer handbag glanced at Nia before whispering something to the man beside her. Amara didn't need to hear to know what they were saying. A young black woman in a borrowed dress holding a crying baby in front of a restaurant where dinner could cost her a whole month's salary. She looked so out of place, she was nearly invisible, yet she attracted every unwanted gaze. She gently patted Nia's back, whispering, "Shh, baby, mommy's here." But her voice trembled, betraying the confidence she was desperately trying to hold on to. This date had been Keisha's idea. "You need to get out, Amara," her sister had said firmly over the phone the week before. "You can't just keep working at the diner caring for Nia and falling asleep on the couch. You're only 25. You deserve to have fun. You deserve love." Amara had chuckled, thinking Keisha was dreaming on her behalf. Love, happiness. Those things seemed to belong to another world without stacked-up bills, 10-hour shifts, and the weight of raising a child alone. But Keisha had insisted, telling her about a friend, a man who was kind, successful, and open-minded, who was willing to meet Amara. "Just give it one shot," Keisha pleaded, and eventually Amara agreed. She didn't want to disappoint her sister, not because she believed in fairy tales. Now, standing outside La Lumiere, Amara regretted that decision. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, borrowing a dress, applying an old foundation and lipstick she barely used. She'd asked Mrs. Carter, her elderly neighbor, to watch Nia, but the woman caught the flu at the last minute, and Keisha was out of town for work. Left with no other option, Amara had brought Nia with her, hoping this man James wouldn't mind. But as the clock ticked another 5 minutes without a sign of him, that hope faded like mist. Nia cried louder, her tiny fists clenching Amara's shirt, and a wave of failure crashed over her. She looked into the restaurant's window, where warm golden lights reflected off white linen-covered tables and sparkling wine glasses. Inside, a couple laughed, the woman radiant in a bright red silk dress, the man gazing at her like she was his whole world. Amara turned away, her throat tightening. When was the last time someone looked at her like that? When was the last time she felt beautiful, desired, or seen as a woman, not just a tired single mom, struggling to keep her head above water? She thought about returning to her tiny apartment in the southern part of the city, where the smell of burnt toast from the neighbor's kitchen seeped through the thin walls. She could turn on the TV, watch some meaningless reality show, and fall asleep on the couch like she did every night after Nia drifted off. That was her life, safe, familiar, but empty. A small part of her, the part Keisha had stirred, whispered that she deserved more than that. Maybe the man was just stuck in traffic. He could show up, smile, and not be bothered by Nia. Maybe there was still room for something good in her life. But then a group of guests exited the restaurant, the sharp clicks of high heels echoing on the pavement, and a woman in a glittering sequin dress paused, staring at Amara and Nia with curiosity and disdain. "There's no place for kids here," she said, her voice soft but blade-like, before turning away to continue her conversation with her friends. Amara's face burned as if she'd been slapped. She bowed her head, holding Nia tighter. fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. She didn't belong here, not in the world of people who could drop $100 on dinner without thinking twice. She was a waitress at Happy Diner, earning $24,000 a year, and each month was a battle to pay rent, buy diapers, and meet Nia's needs. Nia squirmed in her arms, her cries turning into exhausted whimpers. Amara stroked her daughter's soft curls and whispered, "I'm sorry, baby. I shouldn't have brought you here." She looked down the street where the traffic lights flickered and considered calling a bus home. But then her phone buzzed a message from Keisha. "Don't give up, Mara. He's worth the wait. Trust me." Amara sighed, biting her lip. Keisha was always hopeful, believing life would deliver something magical if you opened your heart. Amara wasn't sure she believed that anymore. Not after Nia's father left, when she told him she was pregnant. Not after the countless sleepless nights, wondering if she was enough to be a good mother. She looked up, deciding to stay a few minutes longer, not for the mystery man, but for herself, for the small part of her soul that still longed for a chance, a moment to feel like she was more than just a single mom, a waitress, or a black woman weighed down by judgmental stares. She stood taller, wiped the tear that had escaped her cheek, and whispered to Nia, "Just a little longer, baby. I promise." And at that moment, beneath the neon lights and among the strangers' stares, Amara had no idea that her life was about to change forever, all because she chose to stay, and because a man was walking toward her, one who would see her not with judgment, but with the kind of reverence she had never dared to dream of. Amara stood under the neon lights of La Lumiere, holding Nia tighter as the baby's cries softened into small whimpers. She had just decided to stay a few more minutes, not because she believed the man named James would show up, but because she wanted to prove to herself that she didn't give up easily. At that very moment, a man approached the restaurant, his eyes fixed on his phone, looking like he was searching for someone. He was tall, with neatly combed dark brown hair, dressed in a perfectly tailored gray suit, exuding the kind of confidence that belonged to a world Amara had only seen through TV screens. She glanced at him, her heart skipping slightly, wondering if this was the man Keisha had set her up with. The man looked up, his green eyes meeting hers, and he stopped, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "Hello," he said, his voice deep and warm. "Are you my date?" Amara blinked, surprised by the friendliness in his tone. She gave a hesitant nod, suddenly aware of how tight the borrowed dress felt. "I'm Amara. And this is Nia," she said, lifting the baby slightly, bracing for the moment he would frown or come up with an excuse to walk away upon seeing the child. But instead, the man, presumably James, leaned in, gazing at Nia with genuine interest. "Hi, Nia," he said gently, as if greeting an old friend. "You don't seem too happy, huh?" He made a silly face, widening his eyes and puffing out his cheeks, causing Nia to stop whimpering and stare at him wide-eyed with curiosity. Amara was stunned. She had prepared for rejection, for judgmental looks, but this man had somehow made her daughter stop crying, if only for a moment. "I'm James Carter," he said, straightening up and offering his hand. Amara shook it, noting how soft and uncalloused it was, the hand of someone who had never done hard labor. There might have been a mix-up. "My assistant arranged this date. She can be a little creative sometimes." He smiled, a mix of sincerity and sheepishness, and Amara smiled back without meaning to. "So does my sister," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "Keisha said she knew someone who knew someone. I'm not even sure anymore." She paused suddenly, worried they might not be each other's intended date, but James didn't seem confused. "Well then, let's find out," he said, gesturing toward the restaurant door. "I think we both deserve a seat, especially Nia. She looks like she could use a quiet place." Amara hesitated. The thought of walking into La Lumiere with Nia, where people might stare at her, a black woman with a crying baby, made her tense. But James's encouraging gaze and the way he didn't seem bothered by Nia gave her the strength to nod. She said, holding Nia closer as they stepped through the glass doors. Inside, the restaurant felt like another world. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, white silk tablecloths draped every table, and the soft clinking of cutlery echoed off porcelain plates. The hostess, a woman with blonde hair pinned in a tight updo, glanced at Amara and Nia, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, her voice chilly, her eyes flicking over Amara's borrowed dress and the baby in her arms. James stepped forward, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Yes, I believe so. Under James Carter, or perhaps Emma Collins. I'm not sure, my assistant handled the details." He looked at Amara, raising an eyebrow as if sharing an inside joke. The hostess checked the computer, frowning. "I see a table for James Carter at 8 o'clock, table 12. But there's also one for Amara Johnson simultaneously in table 14. She looked between them, clearly expecting an explanation. Amara's face flushed. "Oh, no," she said quietly. "There must be some mistake. I'm sorry, I should." She started to turn, but James raised a hand to stop her. "Hold on," he said calmly. "I understand what's happened. My assistant Janet did mention the name Amara. Maybe someone crossed a wire." He turned to the hostess, smiling politely but firmly. "Please seat us at the quietest table you have. We'll sort it out ourselves." The hostess hesitated, but James's tone made her shift immediately. "Of course, Mr. Carter," she said, guiding them past the crowded tables to a secluded corner where the restaurant's noise dulled. Amara followed, holding Nia, her head spinning. Who was this man who could change the hostess's attitude with just a sentence? And why was he so at ease with her and Nia, as if bringing a baby along was the most natural thing in the world? They sat down, and James pulled out a chair for Amara, with a natural grace that surprised her. Nia, now calm, rested in her arms, her wide eyes still fixed on James, as if enchanted. "I should explain," Amara said quickly, feeling the need to clarify. "My babysitter got sick at the last minute, and I didn't have anyone else. I know this isn't what people expect on a date, and if you'd rather leave, I understand entirely." James tilted his head, looking at her with no trace of judgment. "Amara," he said gently, "I'm not going anywhere. Nia is a wonderful little girl who deserves to be part of this evening." He looked at Nia again, making another funny face that drew a slight sound that almost resembled a giggle. Warmth bloomed in Amara's chest. She had braced herself for rejection, yet she was sitting across from a man who seemed to want to be there genuinely. So James said, leaning back in his chair, "Even if we're not the people meant to meet tonight, maybe this is a chance to get to know each other. What do you do, Amara? When you're not busy being a fantastic mom, I mean." He smiled, and Amara realized he was trying to make her comfortable. She took a breath. "I'm a waitress at Happy Diner down south. It's not glamorous, but I enjoy meeting people, and it helps pay the bills. Mostly." She paused. Worried, she sounded unremarkable. "And you?" James shrugged, relaxed. "I'm in business company management contracts, boring stuff like that." He said it simply, but Amara noticed how he avoided getting too detailed, as if he didn't want to brag. "But honestly, I prefer moments like this, sitting with an interesting person and an adorable little girl." Amara looked at him, searching for any sign of pretense, but saw only sincerity. Nia began to fidget, and she looked down to comfort her, feeling both relieved and wary. This man seemed too good to be true. He was a white American, clearly wealthy, and belonged to a world far removed from hers. Why was he here speaking to her like she was the one he'd always wanted to meet? But as James continued making silly faces for Nia, and when he asked her what her favorite dish at Happy Diner was, with genuine curiosity, Amara felt a small spark of hope flicker to life. Maybe, just maybe, tonight wasn't a mistake. Maybe this was the beginning of something she hadn't dared to dream of. Amara sat across from James at a quiet corner table inside La Lumière, the warm golden glow of the crystal chandelier casting light across his face, highlighting the sharp angles. A white American man with striking green eyes and a disarming smile. Now calm in her mother's arms, Nia clutched a corner of Amara's shirt, her wide eyes occasionally drifting toward James, as if she were trying to size him up. Amara still couldn't quite believe she was here speaking to a man who didn't seem the least bit unsettled by the presence of a child or the reality of her situation. But doubt still lingered beneath her skin. He was too perfect, too courteous, and from a world she, a black waitress with a modest income, could never truly reach. James leaned forward, setting his glass of water down, his gaze, gentle but curious. "Amara," he said in his deep voice, "you've told me about your job at Happy Diner. But aside from being a mother and a server, what do you love to do? I mean, what makes you feel alive?" The question caught her off guard. Amara blinked. How long had it been since anyone asked about her, not about Nia or her work shifts, but about what she loved? She hesitated gently, brushing Nia's soft curls to steady herself. She said, "I used to love drawing." Her voice is quiet but precise. "In high school, I'd draw pictures of kids from the neighborhood, little moments like them playing basketball, or an old lady selling flowers by the corner. I think it helped me see beauty in ordinary things." She smiled, though there was a trace of sadness in it. "But after I had Nia, there just wasn't time. The sketch pads and pencils are just decorations gathering dust in the corner." James nodded, eyes still locked on her, like he genuinely wanted to understand. "Those sound like beautiful pieces," he said. "Maybe someday you'll show them to me." Amara gave a small laugh, assuming he was just being polite. But then he added, "I have no artistic talent, but I do know what it feels like to lose something you love. My job wastes most of my time, and sometimes I forget who I am outside of the name James Carter, CEO." Amara raised an eyebrow, curious now. "You said your job is tedious, but I doubt it's that simple. Running a company? What is that exactly? Buying, selling, or ruling the world?" She teased, but her tone had an edge. She wanted to know more about this mystery man. James chuckled, a deep, genuine sound. "Not quite ruling the world, but close," he joked, winking. "I run Carter Enterprises, which is real estate and logistics. We own a few buildings in the city, a couple of ports, and a bunch of complicated stuff." He paused as if realizing he might be getting too dry. "But honestly, that's not the most interesting thing about me. Or at least I hope not." Amara tilted her head, sensing a connection starting to form. "So, what is the most interesting thing about you?" she asked, voice soft but probing. She wasn't sure how far she wanted to dig, but something about James, his openness and the way he looked at Nia, as though she belonged in this conversation, made her want to know more. James fell quiet momentarily, his gaze drifting as if searching for a memory. "It's the moments I feel most like myself," he said, at last, his voice lower now. "I grew up in a wealthy family, Amara. My parents were always busy meetings, business trips, charity galas. I had everything, a private school, designer clothes, and my driver. But I didn't have a connection. I was raised by housekeepers and tutors, not by my parents." He paused, looking down at the table, his finger tracing the rim of his water glass. "When I was 15, I used to sneak out at night to play basketball with kids in the neighborhood nearby. No one knew who I was or cared how much money I had. For the first time, I felt like I was just James, not Carter's son. But when my father found out, he forbade me from going back. He said people like me didn't belong there. Amara felt a tightness in her chest. She knew what it meant to not belong, like standing outside La Lumiere earlier, feeling the weight of strangers' judgment because of her skin color and circumstances. That sounds lonely, she said, her voice quiet, but full of sincerity. James nodded, his eyes meeting hers with a flicker of something raw and unguarded. It was. And when I got older, I thought things would be different. I built a company and made more money than my father ever dreamed. And then I met Sophia, the woman I thought was the love of my life. He gave a dry laugh, one without warmth. She was beautiful, brilliant, and understood my world. But when the company hit a rough patch a few years ago, when I was working nonstop to keep it from collapsing, she left. She said she couldn't handle the pressure and spotlight of being with someone like me. That's when I realized she loved my lifestyle, not me. Amara stayed silent, listening, feeling like she was being given a rare glimpse into a part of James he didn't share with many. Nia squirmed softly in her arms, letting out a small, sleepy whimper, and Amara leaned down to kiss her forehead, gently soothing her. "I'm sorry," she said, looking back at James. "That must have been hard." James shrugged, though his eyes still carried the weight of it. "It taught me something. I've spent my whole life searching for something real, someone who sees me, not the money or the name. And tonight, I walked in here for a date I wasn't even sure I wanted, and saw you." He smiled, his gaze softening as it settled on Amara and Nia. "You stood there holding your baby, looking like you were ready to take on the world despite being scared. I don't know what it is, Amara, but something about you made me want to stay." Amara felt her face warm. His words were genuine, but she couldn't help wondering if this was a dream too good to be true. "James," she said, her voice slightly trembling, "you don't know anything about me. I'm a single mother. I work at a diner. I live in an apartment where the hot water breaks half the time. I don't belong in your world." James tilted his head, looking at her steadily, unwaveringly. "Maybe it's my world that needs someone like you," he said. "And Nia." He leaned toward the baby, pulling another silly face, which made her giggle and wave her tiny fists. "This little one knows how to pick people, doesn't she?" Amara laughed, the tightness in her chest easing just a little. But deep down, she still heard the whisper of doubt. James Carter. Wealthy. Successful. A man who could have anyone. Why would he sit here with her? The gulf between them, race-class life experience, felt too wide to cross. And yet, as James kept talking, asking about her old drawings, and telling a story about the time he tried to cook and nearly burned down his kitchen, Amara felt a fragile sliver of hope flicker to life. Maybe just tonight she could let herself believe someone like James could see her, not as a struggling single mom or a black woman weighed down by judgment, but simply as Amara, a woman who once dreamed of sketches and a better life. Amara sat in the quiet corner of La Lumiere, the glow of the crystal chandelier casting soft light across the white silk tablecloth, illuminating the gleaming silver cutlery, now completely calm. Nia rested in her lap, her tiny hands clutching a fold of Amara's dress, those wide, blinking eyes occasionally peeking up at James Carter, the man sitting across the table with a warm, steady smile. Their conversation had been deep and effortless, drifting from Amara's old sketches to James's lonely childhood. But even as his sincerity made her want to believe that tonight was something special, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here. A black single mother, seated in a space designed for people like James, wealthy, white, and at ease in a world built to welcome them. A neatly dressed young waiter approached with 2 glasses of water and a basket of warm bread. He set the basket down, his glance skimming over Amara and Nia, with a subtle but unmistakable air of disapproval. "Are you ready to order?" He asked, his tone polite but cold eyes only on James, as if Amara were invisible. Her face flushed, a familiar heat rising as she lowered her eyes, gently patting Nia's back to keep herself composed. Sensing the shift, James turned to the waiter with a sharp look. He said, "We'll need a few more minutes," his voice calm, but edged with authority. "And please make sure both of us are served equally." The waiter blinked, caught off guard, then nodded quickly. "Of course, sir," he said before retreating. Amara glanced at James, both grateful and surprised. He hadn't just noticed the waiter's attitude, he'd spoken up something few people ever did. "Thank you," she said quietly, eyes drifting down to the table. I'm used to that kind of thing. That doesn't mean it doesn't still sting." James tilted his head, his expression both gentle and firm. "You shouldn't have to be used to it, Amara. No one has the right to make you feel like you don't belong." His words were earnest, but Amara couldn't help wondering if he truly understood what it meant to be judged for your skin circumstances or the baby you held in your arms. She was about to reply when Nia stirred, letting out a soft, sleepy groan. Amara leaned down to soothe her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'm here, baby," she whispered, feeling the warmth of her daughter's little body. James smiled, watching them with fascination. "She's a tough one," he said. "I cried all evening and was still wide awake." He puffed his cheeks and widened his eyes in a playful expression, drawing a giggle from Nia, her tiny hands reaching toward him. Amara laughed, tension easing, but only for a moment. A group of guests passed by, 3 women in glittering dresses and a man in a tuxedo, all chatting loudly. As they walked past, one of the women, platinum blonde and immaculately dressed, stopped, her eyes sweeping from James to Amara and Nia. "Oh," she said, voice high and syrupy. "I didn't know La Lumiere allowed children now. How progressive." Her smile was laced with disdain, and her friends stifled laughs behind their hands. Amara felt like she'd been slapped. Her ears burned as she pulled Nia closer, wishing she could disappear. James rose from his seat, calm but steely. "Excuse me," he said, voice clear and cutting through the ambient clatter of the restaurant. "I wasn't aware La Lumiere allowed people with no manners to enter." "How disappointing." The woman blinked, her face flushing red as her friends fell silent. "How dare you," she started, but James cut in. "I suggest you move along and leave us in peace unless you'd like me to involve management." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, and the group quickly walked off, muttering to one another. Amara stared at him, her heart pounding. He had defended her and Nia publicly without hesitation. "You didn't have to do that," she said, voice trembling. "They just said what everyone else is thinking." James sat back down, his expression softening. "They don't speak for me, Amara, and I don't care what they think. I care about whether you and Nia are comfortable." She nodded, but her thoughts were tangled. The woman's words weren't new. Amara had heard similar comments all her life. From the suspicious stares in luxury boutiques to whispered judgments about her being a young single mother. This was her reality. And here, in a space so foreign to her, with a man like James beside her, those words felt even sharper. She wasn't just a single mom. She was a Black woman, in a world where people like her were rarely welcomed. The waiter returned, this time with a more respectful demeanor, holding 2 menus. James turned to her with a kind smile. "What would you like to try? I've heard the steak here is fantastic." Amara looked at the menu and felt her heart sink. The cheapest item cost half a week's wages. Maybe just the salad?" she murmured. James raised an eyebrow. "Amara, this is our date, and it's on me. Get what you want. I want you to enjoy yourself." She hesitated, but the sincerity in his eyes made her relent. "All right, The steak, I guess. James smiled, ordered both of them, and asked for an orange juice for Amara and some soft bread for Nia. She can nibble a little, right? He asked, and Amara nodded, surprised by his thoughtfulness. Once the waiter left, James looked at her again, his tone softer. Amara, I know tonight hasn't been easy. I saw the looks, heard the words, and I know they hurt. But I want you to know, I'm here for you and Nia, not for anyone else in this room. Amara studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but found only honesty. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice low but firm. You don't know me. I showed up with a baby. I'm not the kind of woman you usually date, am I? James was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. You're right. You're not like the women I've dated, he said. And that's precisely why I want to be here. You're real, Amara. You're not trying to impress me. You didn't hide Nia like she's some burden. You make me feel like I can be myself, not James Carter, the billionaire. He chuckled softly, but his eyes remained serious. I won't pretend I understand everything you've been through, but I want to try if you'll let me. Amara's heart raced. His words touched a part of her she hadn't let anyone near, not since Nia's father had walked away after hearing she was pregnant, saying he wasn't ready to be a dad. But she was afraid that James would eventually see the gap between them, not just in wealth, but in race, in how the world treated them. Nia shifted, reaching the table, and Amara smiled down at her. She said, "Want to join the conversation?" And James laughed, handing Nia a small piece of bread, careful that her tiny fingers could grasp it. As their conversation flowed again from favorite films to childhood meals, Amara felt a faint spark of hope begins to kindle. But deep inside, she knew the world beyond these walls filled with judgment, and whispers would not readily accept them. She looked at James, this man who had stood up for her, and wondered if he had the strength to face that world. Or if this was just a beautiful moment before reality pulled them back to separate paths. Amara pushed Nia's stroller along the tree-lined path in Maple Street Park, the afternoon sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting shimmering patches of light on the ground. Sitting in the stroller, Nia waved her tiny arms, trying to catch a butterfly, fluttering by, chirping excitedly. Beside Amara walked James Carter, relaxed in a pale blue shirt and jeans, a far cry from the tailored suit he had worn at La Lumiere just a week before. He carried a small paper bag of bread and occasionally tossed crumbs into the nearby pond, smiling each time Nia giggled at the ducks, scrambling to snatch the pieces. It had been 3 weeks since that fateful dinner, and Amara still wasn't used to James being part of her life. They'd met several times since, always in low-key places. The park, a small cafe near Happy Diner, or an ice cream shop James insisted had the best sundaes in the city. He never suggested fancy restaurants again, as if he instinctively knew she felt more at ease in casual, familiar spaces. But what surprised Amara most was the way James connected with Nia. He brought picture books for her, learned how to hold her without making her cry, and even sang children's songs in his low, awkward voice, often making Amara laugh. That afternoon, as they sat on a wooden bench by the pond, James pulled a brightly illustrated children's book from his bag, a cheerful elephant on the cover. He said, "I saw this at the bookstore," handing it to Amara. "Nia loves colors, right? I thought she might like this one." Amara flipped through the thick pages, admiring the vivid artwork. "James, you don't need to bring Nia something every time we see you," she said gently but firmly. "She already has enough toys." James shrugged, smiling. "I know, but I like making her smile. And you too." He looked at her, his green eyes catching the light. Amara felt her cheeks warm, but she turned her attention to Nia, who was trying to grab a leaf from the stroller tray. She still wasn't used to James's sincerity, how he made her feel cared for, without expecting anything in return. And deep down, she was still afraid that the differences between them, race class, life experience, would eventually break whatever they were building. Amara James said, his voice soft. "You told me about your drawings. Have you ever thought about picking it back up? Do you have time?" The question caught her off guard. She shook her head with a small laugh. "I want to. But time's a luxury. I don't have much left for art between diner shifts, taking care of Nia, and just trying to sleep." She paused, staring out at the water. "But I miss that feeling. When I used to draw, it was like the world slowed down, and I felt free." James nodded, his eyes never leaving her. "I get that. My job's the same sometimes. There are days I sit through meetings, listen to reports, and wonder what I'm doing. I love building my company, but it takes so much. I miss the days when I could be James, not the CEO." He laughed, but there was a sadness to it. "Once I tried learning guitar to relax. My assistant said I was so bad the whole office had a headache." Amara laughed out loud, picturing him with a guitar. "I'd love to hear you play," she teased. James winced dramatically. "Trust me, you'd regret it." They both laughed, and for a moment, Amara felt like they were just two people, not separated by wealth or race. But then, Nia fussed, wanting out of the stroller, and Amara picked her up, reality settling around them. They continued walking and talking about little things: Amara's favorite meal, her mom's fried chicken, the horror movie that had given James nightmares as a kid. But when they stopped by an ice cream stand, James suddenly said, "Amara, I heard your car broke down last week. I know a great mechanic, a friend of mine. I could call him and get it taken care of right away." His tone was gentle, as if it were no big deal. But Amara felt a wave of discomfort rise. She stopped, holding Nia a little tighter. "James, I told you I don't want you paying for things like that," she said, her tone firm. "Yes, my car's broken, but I'll take care of it. I work. I've got savings. I don't need your help." The word help came out sharper than she intended, and she saw James's expression shift, hurt flickering in his eyes. "Amara, I didn't mean," he began, but she cut him off. "I know you didn't. But you don't understand. I'm a black single mom working as a waitress. If I let you pay for everything, what will people think? That I'm using you, that I'm only with you for money." Her voice trembled. "I don't want to feel like I owe you, James. I want us to be equals." James was silent, then slowly nodded. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't think of it that way. I just wanted to make things easier for you and Nia. But you're right. I don't fully understand what you are going through. I'll respect what you want." He paused, glancing at Nia, who was nibbling on a cookie from his bag. "But if I bring cookies for Nia, you won't be mad." Amara laughed, the tension easing. "Cookies are okay," she said. They continued walking, but there was still a subtle awkwardness between them. She knew James meant well, but their worlds were so different. He, a wealthy white man who could fix problems with a single phone call, and she, a black woman counting every dollar, always wary of how she might be perceived. James looked at her thoughtfully as they sat back down on a bench. "Amara, I want to ask you something. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. But have you ever thought about going back to school? You mentioned once that you wanted to be a teacher." The question caught her by surprise. She looked at Nia, now playing with a fallen leaf, and sighed. "I've thought about it, but it's not realistic. Tuition books, daycare while in class, it's all too much. I can't cut back my work hours, and I don't want Nia to spend too much time with strangers." James nodded, but she saw something spark in his eyes, as if a plan were forming. "I was just curious," he said quickly, as if worried she'd think he was about to offer to pay. "You'd make an incredible teacher. Kids would love you because you care for Nia and your patience." Amara smiled, touched by the compliment, but still felt the distance. He spoke easily, but he didn't know how hard she fought every day to keep her world from falling apart. Suddenly, Nia reached out toward James, letting out a sound that resembled "ba," catching them both off guard. Amara laughed, covering her mouth. "Did she call you something?" James raised his eyebrows, pretending to be serious. "That was short for best friend forever." They laughed, and the awkwardness melted away. James offered his finger to Nia, and she gripped it tightly, giggling. Amara watched them, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For just this moment, she could believe that James genuinely wanted to be here, not just with her, but with Nia too. But as the sun set and they parted ways, Amara pushed the stroller back toward her apartment, unable to silence the lingering question. Could someone like James, with the whole world at his fingertips, truly stay with someone like her, with all the barriers the world had built between them? She looked down at Nia, peacefully sleeping, and whispered, "Mommy hopes he's real baby." She didn't know that James, driving home at that moment, was thinking of her, too determined to prove that he didn't just want to stay. He wanted to build something real with both of them. Amara stood behind the happy diner counter, tying the green apron back around her waist. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and toasted bread lingered in the air. Her shift was nearly over, and her feet ached after 8 hours on her feet. Nia was at the nearby daycare, where she loved playing with colorful building blocks and was often praised by her teacher as very sharp. Amara smiled at the thought of her daughter, but the smile quickly faded as her phone buzzed with a message from her sister. "Keisha, call me as soon as your shift ends. I need to talk to you about your guy James." Amara frowned, a wave of unease creeping in. Keisha had always encouraged her to date, but this tone was different. Over the past 4 weeks, her relationship with James Carter had grown in ways she never expected. They saw each other 2 or 3 times a week, usually at Maple Street Park, or a cozy cafe where James would tell amusing stories from his company and listen patiently as Amara shared her hectic days. He brought little gifts for Nia, a picture book, a stuffed duck, and was endlessly patient when she fussed. Still, despite James's sincerity, making her want to trust him, Amara couldn't silence her worries. He was a wealthy white man and CEO of Carter Enterprises. She was a black single mother, surviving on diner wages. The gap between them wasn't just financial. It was how the world viewed people like them. She called Keisha when she left the diner, sitting on a bench at the bus stop beneath a flickering streetlight. "What's going on?" she asked, tension tightening her voice. Keisha sighed on the other end. "Mara, I'm just worried. I heard some things about James Carter from a real estate friend. He's rich but also has a reputation for rotating through girlfriends. High society types, you know. I'm afraid you're just an experiment for him, a phase before he returns to his world." Amara felt her heart tighten. "What are you saying, Keisha? James isn't like that. He's been kind to Nia and me." But even as she spoke, doubt colored her voice. Keisha softened her tone. "I know you like him, but you have to be careful. A man like James doesn't live in our world. He might be good to you now, but when things get serious, will he face the things you do? The stares, the whispers about you and Nia." Amara sat in silence, watching cars rush past. Keisha hadn't said anything. She hadn't already feared herself since that first night at La Lumiere. But hearing it from her sister, her protector, made it cut deeper. "I'll handle it," she finally said, her voice firm. "But thanks for worrying." She hung up, feeling like a stone had dropped into her chest. The next day, when Amara met James at the park, Keisha's words still echoed in her head. James pushed Nia on a low swing, laughing, as the little girl kicked her feet and squealed with delight. "She's going to be an athlete, Amara." He called out, his eyes gleaming. Nia. Her curls tied into two tiny puffs, giggled her hands, gripping the swing chains. Amara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That evening, while sitting on a bench eating ice cream from a nearby cart, an unknown number message lit up Amara's phone. She opened it to find a link to a tabloid article. James Carter was spotted at a charity gala with a mystery blonde. The photo showed James in a tuxedo, beside a glamorous white woman in a shimmering evening gown, taken just days before Amara first met him. Below the article was a comment. Another girl for Carter. Want to bet how long this one lasts? The message with the link read, You should know who he is. Lisa. Amara felt her blood rush to her ears. Lisa. She didn't know anyone by that name, but the malice in the message was unmistakable. She looked at James, who was recounting a story about spilling coffee on the necessary paperwork, and felt mixed anger and suspicion. James. She said, her voice sharper than she intended. Can you explain this? She handed him the phone, the screen facing up. James frowned as he scanned the article, then sighed. Amara, that's Lisa, an old colleague. She wasn't happy when I turned down her company's proposal a few months ago. She sent this to stir up drama. He looked at her, serious. The woman in the photo is a business associate, nothing more. I wasn't dating her or anyone before I met you. Amara held Nia, nibbling on some ice cream and trying to stay calm. James, I don't know what to think. My sister said you have a reputation that you date around. Now there's this article and someone I don't know is texting me. You live in a world I don't understand. Galas, high society women. How am I supposed to believe you're serious about me? About Nia. James was quiet, his eyes heavy. He stood, paced a few steps, returned, and knelt before her so their eyes met. Amara. I can't erase my past or what people write about me. Yes, I've dated before, but no one has ever made me feel the way you do. You and Nia, you're real. You don't see me as a paycheck or a brand. You see me as a man. He paused, his voice trembling slightly. I'm not saying this will be easy. I know my world comes with pressure, especially for you. But I want to try, if you'll let me. Amara stared at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, but also feeling Nia's tiny hand in hers and remembering Keisha's voice. She was a black woman, a single mother, and the world was not kind to women like her in stories like this. James. I want to believe you, she said softly, but I'm scared. I don't want Nia to grow up with someone who walks away. I don't want to be hurt. James nodded, taking her hand, gentle yet firm. I understand. I'll prove it with actions, not words. If you need time, I'll wait. He looked at Nia and smiled. And I'll keep bringing cookies for this little one, okay? As if in agreement, Nia clapped, smearing ice cream on her nose and making them laugh. Chuck. Later, as they said goodbye and Amara pushed the stroller home, her heart was still tangled in knots. James's words were genuine, but so were the article and the message from Lisa. She looked down at Nia, fast asleep, one soft curl resting on her forehead, and whispered, Mommy's going to be careful, baby. What she didn't know was that at that very moment, James was sitting in his car, calling his assistant with a quiet but firm directive. Find out who sent that message, and make sure they don't come near Amara or Nia again. Because James Carter wasn't just staying. He was preparing to protect the most valuable thing he'd ever found them. Amara sat on the worn-out couch in her small apartment, the soft glow from the table lamp casting light on the tiny cracks in the wall. Nia lay curled in her lap, eyes shut tight, her breathing raspy from a cold. She'd had a mild fever for 2 days, accompanied by small fits of coughing, that had kept Amara awake through the nights. She had called the pediatrician twice, but they'd told her it was just a common cold, advised fluids and rest. But as Amara looked at her daughter's flushed face, her curls damp with sweat, she felt helpless. She'd missed 2 shifts at Happy Diner, losing income she couldn't afford to lose, and the stress was pushing her to the edge. She gently patted Nia's back, whispering, "Mommy's here, baby," her voice shaky, betraying her exhaustion. It had been 5 weeks since she met James Carter, and although their relationship was growing, she still hesitated to call him. After the confrontation over the article and Lisa's message, James had stayed true to his word, showing sincerity through small gestures, bringing books for Nia, listening to Amara talk about her long days, and never once trying to solve her problems with money. But as a black woman and a single mother, Amara feared letting him in too far. The world was always ready to judge. Her phone buzzed, and James's name lit up the screen. Amara hesitated, then answered, her voice weary. "Hello, James." On the other end, he immediately sensed something was wrong. "Amara, are you okay? And I hear Nia. Is she all right?" Amara sighed, too tired to pretend. "Nia has a cold. Just a cold, they said, but she's uncomfortable, and I'm just tired." Nia let out a slight cough, and Amara felt tears threatening to rise. "I'm coming over," James said, his voice firm. "James, you don't need to," she protested. "You have work and I don't want you getting sick." But he cut her off. "Amara, I wasn't asking. Give me 20 minutes. He hung up before she could say anything more. When the knock came, Amara opened the door, still wearing her wrinkled pajamas from the night before, her hair tied in a messy bun. James stood there, not in his usual tailored suit, but in a hoodie and jeans, holding a bag. He looked at her and Nia, his green eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Amara shook her head, no longer able to pretend. She admitted, and James gently took Nia from her arms. "Hey there, little one," he murmured, cradling Nia to his chest and gently rocking her. "Fighting a cold, huh, brave girl?" Nia, though tired, looked at him with wide eyes, and the rasp of her breath seemed to soften as he began telling an impromptu story about a baby elephant who beat a cold by drinking orange juice. Amara stared, stunned to see Nia, who usually fussed when sick, slowly relaxing in James's arms. He handed her the bag. "I brought some children's cold medicine chicken soup from a place near my apartment and a few coloring pens. I thought maybe you'd like to draw to unwind." Amara looked into the bag, overwhelmed and grateful. "James, how do you always manage all this?" she asked, her voice trembling. James sat beside her on the couch, still holding Nia. "Because I want to help, Amara. Not because I think you can't do it alone, but because I care. About you. About Nia." He paused, eyes meeting hers. "I know you're afraid of letting me get too close. I don't fully understand what you've gone through. Your race, your situation, everything. But I want to learn if you'll let me." Amara looked at him, feeling a wall inside her begin to shift. She took a deep breath, choosing just this once to open up. "James, I'm scared because I've trusted someone before," she said softly. "Nia's father was my college boyfriend. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready to be a dad. Said I'd ruined his future. He left. I gave birth alone, got a job. He paid off his debt and mine. I learned to stand on my own because I got hurt whenever I leaned on someone." James listened silently, his eyes fixed on her, filled with empathy, not judgment. "I'm sorry you went through that," he said. "No one deserves to be abandoned, especially not you. Or Nia." He hesitated, as if weighing something. I've been scared too, Amara. When my company nearly went under 4 years ago, I worked 18-hour days. If I failed, I'd lose everything, my reputation, family, myself. I locked myself in my office, shut people out, convinced I had to carry it all alone. But it only made me lonelier. Amara looked at him and saw something raw in his eyes. A shared brokenness, a quiet understanding. How did you get through it? She asked. James smiled, glancing at Nia now, asleep in his arms, a curl resting against her cheek. I learned to trust my team and myself. And now, I want to trust you. Trust in us, if you're willing. Tears slipped down Amara's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. James, I don't know how to let people help me, she admitted. If I let you into my life, I'll lose myself again. But I don't want to push you away anymore. James touched her hand gently, his fingers warm against hers. We'll take it one step at a time, he said. You don't have to change for me. I want to be part of your world, yours and Nia's. They sat there silently, only Nia's steady breathing filling the room. Amara looked at James, this wealthy white man holding her daughter with the tenderness of a father. She thought about the stares at La Lumiere, Keisha's warnings, Lisa's message, and realized that no matter what the world said, James was here now. Thank you, she whispered. He smiled, his eyes glowing with something unspoken. Are you hungry? He asked gently. I don't want to brag, but I picked the best chicken soup in the city. Amara laughed the first time that day she'd truly let herself feel light. She nodded, and as James walked into the kitchen to warm the soup, she looked at Nia and whispered, I think he's real baby. She didn't know yet, but this moment of vulnerability, care, and trust would change everything and bring them closer than they had ever dared imagine. Amara stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, adjusting the simple yet elegant black dress that Keisha had insisted she wear. You can't go to a charity gala in jeans, Mara, her sister, had said, her voice firm. Tonight, James Carter had invited Amara to a charity event hosted by Carter Enterprises, a gala to raise funds for schools in underprivileged areas. Amara agreed, not because she liked glamorous events, but because she wanted to understand more about James's world and to see if she could belong in it. Nia, now fully recovered from her cold, was staying with Keisha. The little girl waved her tiny hands to say goodbye to her mother, as if cheering her on. When James arrived to pick her up, he stepped out of a sleek black sedan, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his dark brown hair neatly combed. He smiled, his green eyes lighting up as he looked at her. Amara, you look stunning, he said, opening the car door for her. Amara smiled, though her heart was racing. Thank you, but I still feel like I'm pretending to be someone else, she admitted, smoothing her dress. James took her hand gently. You don't have to pretend. Just be Amara, that's enough. They arrived at the Grand Hotel, where the gala was held in a lavish ballroom adorned with crystal chandeliers and gilded walls. Amara felt like she had stepped into a Hollywood movie, but the stares from the guests, men in tuxedos and women in sparkling evening gowns, made her tense. She was among the few black people in the room, and her presence beside James drew curious glances and whispers. An older woman wearing a pearl necklace glanced at Amara and then turned to her friend, speaking loud enough for Amara to hear. Who's that girl? Carter's new date. Amara clutched her glass of orange juice tightly, trying to stay composed. James, who was talking with a nearby investor, noticed her discomfort. He touched her back and led her to a quieter corner. Are you okay? He asked, his eyes filled with concern. Amara nodded, but her voice trembled. I'm not used to those looks. They're looking at me like I don't belong here. James frowned, scanning the room. They don't matter, Amara. You're here with me, and that's all I care about. But it didn't stop there. As they posed for event photos, A tabloid journalist approached camera flashing. "Mr. Carter, is this your new girlfriend?" he asked, his tone mocking eyes sweeping over Amara with scrutiny. Before James could reply, the journalist continued, "I heard she's a waitress and has a kid. Quite the change from your previous dates." Amara felt the blood rush to her ears, as if the floor beneath her was collapsing. She wanted to run, but James held her hand tighter. He turned to the journalist, his voice cold as steel. "She's Amara Johnson, an incredible and strong woman, and I'm proud to be with her. If you want to write something, write that. Now please step aside." The journalist blinked, clearly caught off guard, and quickly retreated. James turned back to Amara, his gaze softening. "I'm sorry, Amara. I didn't expect this to happen." Amara shook her head, eyes brimming with tears. "It's not your fault, James. But I don't know if I can handle this world. The stares, the comments, the articles. What will they call me? A gold digger? A temporary fling?" She paused, her voice shaking. "I'm a black woman, a single mother, a waitress. Your world will tear me apart." James led her to the balcony, where the cool air eased the tension. He looked at her eyes, unwavering. "Amara, I know my world isn't easy. I know you face things I'll never fully understand because of your skin color, Nia and everything. But I want you to know that I choose you every day. I don't want you to endure this, but if you stay, I will do everything possible to protect you and Nia." Amara looked at him, saw the sincerity in his eyes, and thought of Nia with her radiant smile and curly ponytail. James said, "I don't want Nia to grow up in a world where people whisper about her mother. But I don't want to run either. I don't want to let them win." She took a deep breath, feeling a new sense of resolve. "If we're going to do this, I need you with me, not just today, but through every look, every article." James took her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. "I'm here, Amara. Not just today, but always if you'll let me." He paused, then smiled. "And I promise to bring Nia all the cookies she wants to make up for it." Amara laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks, but this time from relief. She nodded, feeling as if she had just overcome a massive wall. They returned to the ballroom hand in hand, and though the stares remained, Amara felt stronger. James introduced her to a few colleagues, calling her the most special person in my life, and she saw their eyes shift from curiosity to respect. By the end of the evening, a different article appeared online. This time, a photo of them on the balcony with the caption, "James Carter defends girlfriend at charity gala. A love story that breaks all barriers." On the way home, Amara sat in James's car, gazing out the window, her heart in turmoil, but full of hope. "Thank you," she said softly, "for standing up for me." James looked at her and smiled. "Thank you, Amara, for staying." She thought of Nia sleeping soundly at Keisha's house and imagined a future where her daughter would grow up knowing that her mother had dared to love and face the world for her. When James stopped the car in front of her apartment, he leaned down and kissed her forehead, a tender gesture that made her heart race. "See you and Nia soon," he said. Amara nodded, stepping out of the car feeling like she had just crossed a new threshold. She didn't know that James, as he drove away, was already calling his assistant, instructing them to deal with any negative press about Amara determined to protect the woman he loved and the little girl who had stolen his heart. Amara sat on the familiar bench in Maple Street Park, the golden sunset casting its light over the pond, where ducks drifted lazily. Nia, now 7 months old, lay in her stroller, her tiny hands clutching a duck-shaped stuffed animal that James had given her, chirping excitedly as she watched the birds. James sat beside Amara, not in a suit or tuxedo, but simply in a white shirt and jeans, his dark brown hair tousled slightly by the wind. They had just finished 2 ice creams from a nearby cart, and Amara felt a rare sense of peace as if the outside world with its judging stares and tabloid headlines had temporarily faded away. 6 weeks had passed since the charity gala, where James publicly defended Amara from a reporter, and their relationship had deepened more than ever. They saw each other more often at the park and Amara's apartment, where James would help lull Nia to sleep or watch old comedies with her. He no longer offered to solve her problems with money, but instead listened to her talk about her dreams of becoming a teacher and shared his pressures running Carter Enterprises. But Amara, a black woman and single mother, still worried that the differences between them, race, class, the eyes of society, might tear everything apart. Amara James, said his deep voice pulling her from her thoughts. "What are you thinking about? You look like you're on another planet." He smiled, his green eyes glowing under the sunset. Amara smiled softly, brushing a curly lock of Nia's hair. "I'm just thinking about everything. About you, about Nia, about how fast everything's changed. 6 months ago, I was trying to survive daily, and now I'm sitting here with you feeling like I can dream again." James nodded, his eyes never leaving her. "Me too," he said. "Before I met you, I thought my life was just work meetings and parties I didn't want to attend. But you and Nia, you both changed everything." He paused, looking at Nia, who was trying to pull a leaf from the stroller, and smiled. "This little one's a warrior, isn't she? She makes me want to be a better man." Amara laughed, her heart warming. But then she looked at him, her voice serious. "James, do you ever think about the future? I mean, with me and Nia? Your world. It's not easy. The headlines, the stares, the way people look at me, a black single mom with nothing but a waitress job. Are you sure you want this?" James was silent momentarily, and Amara feared she had gone too far. But then he stood up and knelt before her on the park grass, leaving her stunned. "Amara Johnson," he said, his voice trembling slightly but firm. "I've been thinking about the future since you walked into La Lumiere with Nia in your arms. I know my world isn't perfect. I know you face things I'll never fully understand because of your skin, Nia, and everything. But I also know that I love you and Nia as if she were my own." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple silver ring with a small sparkling diamond. "This isn't the flashiest ring," he said, "because I know you don't like flashy things. But it's my promise that I'll stand by you and Nia through every stare, every article, every challenge. Amara, you would make me the happiest man if you agreed to be my wife." Amara covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. She looked at James, this wealthy white American man kneeling before her in the park, his eyes full of hope and sincerity. She thought of Nia, of all those nights she lay awake worrying about money, of the judgmental stares at the gala, of Keisha's warnings. But she also thought of the moments with James, the way he soothed Nia when she was sick, the way he listened to her dreams, the way he stood up for her before the whole world. "James," she said, her voice trembling, "I love you. I don't know when it happened, but I love you. But I'm scared. I'm afraid the world won't leave us alone. I'm scared Nia will grow up hearing whispers about her mother. And I'm worried I'm not good enough for you, for your world." James took her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers. "Amara, you don't need to be good enough for my world, because you are my world. Nia is my world. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I promise I'll fight for you, for us, every day. You have to say yes, and we'll face it all together." Amara looked into his eyes, saw love and resolve, and then looked at Nia giggling at her stuffed animal, as if cheering her mother on. She took a deep breath, feeling a new courage rise within her. "Yes," she said, her voice clear. "Yes, James, I'll be your wife." James smiled radiantly, like sunlight, and he slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling with emotion. He stood, pulled her into his arms, and they embraced beneath the setting sun, Nia's laughter ringing out like a melody. "I love you, Amara," James whispered, kissing her hair. "And I love this little one." He bent down, making a silly face at Nia, making her clap her hands a curl, falling across her forehead. Amara laughed, tears still on her cheeks, as if a new door had opened. But as they left the park, hand in hand, Amara knew that this proposal wasn't just a promise, it was a challenge. The world outside, with its prejudices about race, class, and her circumstances, would not readily accept them. She thought of Keisha, who might worry, and the headlines that might follow. But she also thought of James, who had knelt before her, not in some fancy restaurant, but in her beloved park, and she felt a new strength. "James," she said, as they paused beside his car, "I want to keep things simple. No grand wedding, no expensive rings. Just us, Nia, and the people who love us." James nodded, smiling. "Simple is exactly what I want, Amara. Just you and Nia." He kissed her gently but promisingly, and Amara felt her heart pound, as if she had finally found her true home. When she got home, cradling a sleeping Nia in her arms, Amara looked at the ring on her finger, the diamond glinting under the light. She thought of their journey from that chance night at La Lumiere to this moment, and whispered to Nia, "Mama said yes, sweetheart. And I hope it's the right thing." She didn't know that James, driving home at that very moment, was already making plans for a future where he, Amara, and Nia would face every challenge together, with love as their greatest strength. Amara sat on the familiar bench in Maple Street Park, the golden sunset reflecting on the pond's surface, where ducks swam lazily. Nia, now 7 months old, lay in her stroller, her tiny hands tightly gripping a duck-shaped stuffed toy James had given her, chirping excitedly as she watched the birds. James sat next to Amara, not in a suit or tuxedo, but simply in a white shirt and jeans, his dark brown hair slightly tousled by the wind. They had just finished 2 ice creams from a nearby cart, and Amara felt a rare sense of peace, as if the outside world with its judgmental stares and tabloid headlines had temporarily disappeared. 6 weeks had passed since the charity gala, where James had publicly defended Amara from a reporter, and their relationship had grown deeper than ever. They saw each other more often at the park, and Amara's apartment, where James helped her put Nia to sleep, or watched old comedies with her. He no longer tried to solve her problems with money, but instead listened as she spoke about her dream of becoming a teacher and shared his struggles running Carter Enterprises. But Amara, a black woman and single mother, still worried that the differences between them, skin color, social class, the gaze of society, might eventually tear everything apart. "Amara," James said, in his deep voice, pulling her from her thoughts, "what are you thinking about? You look like you're on another planet." He smiled, his green eyes glowing in the sunset. Amara gave a soft smile, brushing a curl of Nia's hair. "I'm just thinking about everything. About you, about Nia, about how quickly everything has changed. 6 months ago, I was trying to get through each day, and now I'm sitting here with you feeling like I can dream again." James nodded his eyes, never leaving her. "Me too," he said. "Before I met you, my life was just work meetings and parties I didn't want to attend. But you and Nia, you changed everything." He paused, looking at Nia, who was trying to pull a leaf from her stroller, and smiled. "This little girl is a fighter, isn't she? She makes me want to be a better man." Amara laughed, her heart warming. But then she looked at him, her voice serious. "James, do you ever think about the future, I mean with me and Nia? Your world. It's not easy. The articles, the way people look at me, a black woman, a single mom with nothing but a waitress job. Are you sure this is what you want? James was silent momentarily, and Amara worried she had gone too far. But then he stood up and knelt before her right on the park grass, leaving her stunned. "Amara Johnson," he said, his voice slightly trembling but firm. "I've been thinking about the future since you walked into La Lumiere with Nia in your arms. I know my world isn't perfect. I know you face things I'll never fully understand because of your skin, Nia, and everything. But I also know that I love you and Nia as if she were my own." He took a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple silver ring with a small sparkling diamond. "This isn't the flashiest ring," he said, "because I know you don't like showy things. But it's my promise that I'll stand by you and Nia through every stare, every article, every challenge. Amara, you would make me the happiest man alive if you agreed to be my wife." Amara covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked at James, this wealthy white American man kneeling before her in the park, his eyes filled with hope and sincerity. She thought of Nia the nights she stayed awake worrying about money, the judgmental looks at the gala and Keisha's warnings. But she also thought of the moments with James, how he comforted Nia when she was sick, listened to her dreams, and stood up for her before the entire world. "James," she said, her voice trembling, "I love you. I don't know when it happened, but I love you. But I'm scared. I'm afraid the world won't leave us alone. I'm scared Nia will grow up hearing whispers about her mother. And I'm worried I'm not good enough for you, for your world." James took her hand, his fingers lacing tightly with hers. "Amara, you don't need to be good enough for my world, because you are my world. Nia is my world. I'm not promising everything will be easy, but I promise I'll fight for you, for us every day. You have to say yes, and we'll face everything together." Amara looked into his eyes and saw love and resolve. And then she looked at Nia giggling with her stuffed animal, as if cheering her mother on. She took a deep breath, feeling a new courage rise inside her. "Yes," she said clearly. "Yes, James. I'll be your wife." James smiled radiantly like sunlight, and he slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly with emotion. He stood up, pulled her into his arms, and they embraced beneath the sunset, Nia's laughter ringing like a melody. "I love you, Amara," James whispered, kissing her hair. "And I love this little one." He bent down and made a silly face at Nia, making her clap her hands, a curly tuft falling over her forehead. Amara laughed, tears still on her cheeks, feeling like a new door had opened. But as they left the park, hand in hand, Amara knew that this proposal wasn't just a promise, it was a challenge. The outside world, with its prejudices about race, class, and her background, would not readily accept them. She thought of Keisha, who might worry, and the headlines that might appear. But she also thought of James, who had knelt before her, not in some fancy restaurant, but right in her cherished park, and she felt a new strength. "James," she said as they paused beside his car, "I want everything to be simple. No extravagant wedding, no expensive ring, just us, Nia, and the people who love us." James nodded, smiling. "Simple is exactly what I want, Amara. Just you and Nia." He kissed her, a gentle kiss, but full of promise, and Amara felt her heart race as if she had just found her true home. When she returned to her apartment holding a sleeping Nia in her arms, Amara looked at the ring on her finger, the diamond glinting under the light. She thought of their journey from that chance night at La Lumiere to this moment and whispered to Nia, "Mama said yes, sweetheart, and I hope it was the right thing." She didn't know that James, now driving home, was already planning for a future where he, Amara, and Nia would face every challenge together with love as their greatest strength. Amara stood in the bridal suite of the Grand Hotel, gazing at herself in the full-length mirror, barely able to believe the reflection staring back at her. The simple white wedding dress with its form-fitting cut and sheer veil highlighted her rich brown skin. Her curly hair was loosely tied back and adorned with small white flowers, and the engagement ring on her hand sparkled under the lights. Nia, now nearly 2 years old, stood beside her wearing a cute little white dress with roses printed on the fabric, holding a basket of cookies instead of flowers, because she had insisted on bringing yummy snacks. "Mama pretty," Nia chirped, making Amara laugh and lean down to kiss her cheek. Today was her wedding day, her and James Carter's. A moment she hadn't dared to dream of a year ago. Since that proposal in Maple Street Park, they had been through so much together, from Amara's challenges in college to the stares and scrutiny of a world that still judged race and class. But James had always been there, not just as a lover, but as a partner, helping her care for Nia and supporting her dream of becoming a teacher. At Amara's request, the wedding was a simple celebration in the hotel's garden, with about 50 guests, close friends, and family. Amara's sister Keisha entered the room wearing a light blue bridesmaid dress and looked at her with proud eyes. "Mara, you look like you just stepped out of a fairy tale," she said, adjusting Amara's veil. "I used to worry about James, but now I see how much he loves you and Nia. You deserve this happiness." Amara hugged her, tears welling up. "Thank you for pushing me to go on that date," she said, and they both laughed. But just as Amara was about to step out, a hotel staff member knocked and informed her that an unexpected guest wanted to see her. Her heart tightened when Mrs. Evelyn Carter James's mother entered. She was an older white woman, her silver hair pinned up neatly, wearing an elegant gray silk dress, but her eyes carried a stern expression. Amara had never met her in person. James had told her his mother lived in Europe and disapproved of their relationship, believing Amara was unsuitable for the Carter family. Her sudden appearance filled Amara with anxiety, afraid she might ruin this special day. Amara Evelyn said in a low voice, "May I have a word?" Amara nodded, holding Nia closer, bracing herself for the worst. Evelyn looked at her, then at Nia, and her expression softened. "I was wrong about you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought you were trying to take advantage of James for his money or name. But then I read the article about the charity gala, saw how James defended you and Claire. My daughter told me how much you love James and Nia. I'm sorry, Amara. I want to give you my blessing if you'll accept it." Amara was stunned, feeling a weight drop from her chest. She looked at Nia munching on a cookie, then back at Evelyn. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "All I want is for James and Nia to be happy. I'd be glad if you wanted to be part of our family." Evelyn smiled for the first time, appearing truly warm, and reached down to stroke Nia's hair. "You're such a lovely little girl," she said. Nia giggled and offered her a cookie, making them both laugh. As Evelyn left, Amara felt a profound relief, as though a final barrier had been lifted. Keisha took her hand and whispered, "You did it, Mara." Amara nodded, ready to walk into the garden where James was waiting. The garden was decorated with white flowers and string lights, and soft violin music played in the background. James stood at the end of the aisle in a black tuxedo, his eyes lighting up when he saw Amara. Nia walked ahead, tossing cookies instead of petals, pausing now and then to pick one up and eat it, making the guests laugh. Keisha walked Amara down the aisle, and when she reached James, he took her hand and whispered, "You are my everything." The ceremony was full of emotion. Amara spoke her vows first, her voice clear. "James, a year ago I didn't think happiness was meant for me. But you came into my life, and Nia's not just loving me, but loving her as your own. You've taught me that love is a choice we make every day. Through every challenge, I promise to choose you and give Nia a whole family." James' eyes glistening replied, "Amara, you and Nia have given me a reason to live, not just exist. I promise to love, protect, and respect you, so Nia knows she has a father who will always be there." As they exchanged rings, Nia shouted "Da" from the front row, where she sat with Claire, drawing a wave of laughter from everyone. James leaned in and kissed Amara a gentle but promising kiss, and the entire garden erupted in applause. After the ceremony, they celebrated under the string lights, with Nia dancing with Sophie Claire's daughter, and Evelyn chatting with Keisha, as if they had known each other for years. Amara and James sat side by side as the night drew close, watching Nia sleep in Claire's arms. "Happy, Mrs. Carter?" James asked, smiling. Amara rested her head on his shoulder, looking at her wedding ring. "Happier than I ever imagined," she said. "And you know what Keisha noted, our first date wasn't even set up by anyone. Maybe we just met by chance." James laughed and kissed her forehead. "Or maybe Nia chose me from the start," he said, looking at the sleeping girl. Amara smiled, feeling that everything from La Lumiere to this moment had been destiny. She didn't know what challenges the future held, but with James and Nia beside her, she was ready to face them all. Amara stood at the front of her classroom at Hope Elementary School, the whiteboard behind her covered in colorful chalk drawings by her students' houses, trees, and bright suns. She wore a light blue blouse and a professional skirt, her curly hair tied up high, her smile radiant as she looked out at her 23rd grade students, all raising their hands to answer a question about a story they had just read. 1 year after her wedding to James Carter, Amara graduated from college with a degree in education. She was now a full-time teacher at a school for underprivileged children, where she truly felt she belonged. Nia, now almost 3 years old, was at a nearby daycare where she loved to draw and play with the family dog, a golden retriever named Sunny, whom James and Amara had adopted as Nia's companion. She had grown quickly with her curly hair tied into 2 puffs and a strong personality. She often called James Da and demanded he tell her stories about the baby elephant's adventures every night. Amara smiled at the thought of her daughter, but today a new challenge weighed on her mind. A student named Malik, an 8-year-old boy with sad eyes, constantly getting in trouble for fighting and not doing his homework. After class, Amara sat with Malik in the room, trying to understand what was happening. "Malik, you're a smart boy," she said gently, "but I can see you're not happy. Is there something you want to share?" Malik looked down, fiddling with his pencil, then whispered, "My mom works 2 shifts every day, and I have to stay home with my older brother. He's not nice to me." Amara felt her heart tighten. She remembered her difficult days working at Happy Diner, wondering if she was enough for Nia. She came home and shared Malik's story with James, who played with Nia and Sunny in the backyard. James, who had reduced his hours at Carter Enterprises to spend more time with family, was wearing a t-shirt and jeans building a small sandcastle with Nia. "Da taller," Nia shouted, clapping her hands as Sunny barked happily, his tail wagging furiously. Amara sat beside them and told James about Malik, her voice low. "James, I see myself in that boy. I want to help, but I don't know how." James listened, his green eyes filled with concern. "Amara, you helped Nia and me just by being yourself. Maybe Malik needs the same someone who believes in him." He paused, then smiled. "And I have an idea. Carter Enterprises is funding after-school programs. We could open a center at your school with art classes, sports, and tutoring for kids like Malik." Amara blinked, surprised. "James, that's a big idea. But it'll be expensive, and I don't want to rely on your money." James took her hand gently. "This isn't just my money, Amara. Our dream is to give kids like Malik and Nia a chance. You'll run the center. I'll handle logistics. We're a team. Remember? Amara looked at him, feeling a deep connection. She thought of their journey from that chance evening at La Lumiere, through judgmental stares to their love-filled yet straightforward wedding. The differences between them, she a black woman who had once been a single mother, and he a wealthy white American, had once felt like a barrier. But now, they were a strength, helping them understand and support each other. "All right," she said with a smile. "Let's do it. For Malik, for Nia, for all the kids." The following week, Amara invited Malik's mother, a tired-looking woman named Tanya, to the school for a meeting. Tanya shared that she worked in a warehouse and a retail store, rarely having time for her son. Amara suggested Malik join the after-school program she and James were planning, which included free art and basketball classes. Tanya teared up and hugged Amara. "Thank you," she said. "Malik would love art. He used to draw beautifully, just like you." That night, Amara and James sat on the porch watching Nia chase Sunny around the yard, laughing every time the dog jumped up to lick her face. Amara rested her head on James's shoulder, gazing at the stars above. "James, did you ever think we'd be here? A family, a home, and a dream as big as this center." James kissed her hair and smiled. "I didn't imagine this, but I knew from meeting you and Nia that I wanted to build a life with you both." She looked at him, thinking of all they had overcome, judging stares, tabloid articles, prejudice from James's mother. She also thought of the beautiful moments, Nia calling James Da, her first day standing in front of a class, and Tanya's embrace that day. "James," she said softly, "I used to think love just happened like winning the lottery. But now I think it's a choice. Every day through every challenge." James nodded, taking her hand. "And I choose you, Amara, every day. You and Nia are why I wake up smiling." Nia ran over and hugged both their legs, shouting, "Mama Da, Sunny wants cookies." Amara and James laughed, picking her up as Sunny barked joyfully as if in agreement. As they went inside, Amara looked at a drawing Nia had made on the refrigerator, a family of 3, and a dog beneath a bright sun. She thought of Malik, the center they would soon open, and the future where she and James would continue choosing love, not just for each other, but for the community around them. She didn't know all the challenges ahead, but with James, Nia, and Sunny by her side, she felt ready for love, family, and the dreams they were building together.